The night train, a vessel of routine and mystery, glided through the inky darkness, carrying its passengers to destinations known and unknown. The 9:47 commuter train pulled into the station right on time. Emma stepped aboard, barely noticing the strange hush in the air. She settled into her usual seat, weary after a long day. The other passengers were a familiar blend of exhausted office workers, students scrolling on their phones, and the occasional eccentric loner. But as the train pulled out, Emma felt a subtle shift. The lights flickered and the hum of the engine grew deeper, almost resonant. She glanced at her watch. It had stopped. Outside, the cityscape melted into an unrecognizable blur of dark shapes and faint writhing lights. Emma frowned. Automated voice. Next stop, Garden Avenue. The automated voice announced, calm as ever, but Garden Avenue never came. The train sped onward into a darkness that seemed to swallow even its headlights. The minutes stretched into hours, or so Emma assumed. Her phone refused to turn on, and her fellow passengers began to fidget. Man nearby, I've been on this train for ages. Emma nodded, but her voice caught in her throat. She realized she hadn't spoken since boarding, her thoughts muffled by an oppressive fog in her mind. The scenery outside twisted further, a forest of skeletal trees with hollow, screaming faces etched into their bark. A crimson moon hung in the sky, growing larger with every passing moment. Passengers started to panic. A young woman banged on the doors, sobbing. An older man shouted at an unresponsive conductor. Emma joined the rising murmur, but no one had answers. Then, they noticed something worse. The passengers were changing. The woman who had been banging on the doors now clawed at them with unnaturally long nails. Her hands had blackened, veins bulging like worms beneath the surface. The man who had shouted at the conductor sat slack-jawed in his seat, his eyes sunken and glowing faintly yellow. Emma clutched her chest, feeling a strange itch spreading under her skin. Her reflection in the darkened window showed her lips curling back, exposing teeth that seemed sharper than before. The train car grew hot and stifling, the air reeking of decay. A scream broke through the murmurs as someone dissolved into a pile of twitching shadows, their body writhing into the floorboards like spilled ink. Emma shouted, "We have to stop this train!" Her voice barely human. Her words came out guttural, jagged, but they stirred what remained of the passengers. Together they pushed through to the conductor's booth. It was empty. The controls blinked and hummed with alien symbols impossible to decipher. Emma's reflection in the glass showed her hands curling into talons, her eyes shimmering like pools of molten silver. She turned to the others, no longer people but beasts with distorted limbs and snarling faces. The automated voice returned, but it was wrong now. The syllables stretched and dripping with malice. Automated voice, next stop, eternity. The train screamed through the void, its wheels grinding against tracks that sparked and bled. Emma sank to her knees, her transformation complete. She opened her mouth to cry out, but all that came was a guttural growl. As the train plunged into the infinite darkness, Emma realized the truth. There was no escape. The night train was their home now, and whatever they had been was gone, replaced by monstrous shadows of themselves, bound to ride forever through a world that defied time, space, and hope.